Hello, hello, and welcome back to Unfertile to Unfiltered podcast with me, Vicki, and your other host.
Me, Simona.
And here we are, and we are episode 9, everyone. Yay!
Yay! 9. Woohoo!
9. Feeling fine. Let me just tell you. Let me just tell you, we were literally talking about how we're like, oh my goodness, like we're gonna get back on top of this because we were in, I want to call it was like our transition period, like with both getting back into the
Yes.
swing of things with our kids, with work, with everything, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
mama's
Been
first,
an adjustment.
podcasters second, right? Yeah, for sure, for
That's it.
sure.
That is
And
it.
adjustment is a great word, but I think that like the topic that brings us, like that came up for us today, right, with especially
Mm-hmm.
being in October,
Yes.
and this is a topic that is very important to both of us, especially with going and navigating like the fertility world, and
Mm-hmm.
just all the beautiful and different people we've met through that time is pregnancy and infant loss awareness, right? And so
Yes.
that is one of the observances of this month, but there's so many more, and we just wanted to take a moment to go through them really quickly because, like, it's important for us to acknowledge everyone's struggles, challenges, um, areas of life that they are navigating. So, we know that October is very well known for breast cancer awareness, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
we also know that, I'm sorry, where's my whole little list here? It's also ADHD Awareness Month. Fun fact,
Mm. Did not
didn't
know.
know that was a month now, or an awareness in this month, but like makes a lot of sense. Depression and mental health awareness, which for some of you, as you know, I'm a therapist, and so recently
Mm-hmm.
World Mental Health Day was October 10th. So sending a lot of love and light to people who are maybe just struggling, especially with a lot of things going on in our world these days. So
Yes.
we also have domestic violence awareness, spina bifida awareness, liver awareness, and Down syndrome awareness. So, and listen, there are many more to this list too, right? Specific days as well. October 11th was National Coming Out Day. October 16th is World Food Day. And so, yeah, I mean, just a lot of really beautiful causes and what would you say?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Definitely a lot of different important topics to be aware of this month.
yes,
Like, definitely, like you said, like breast cancer is always like on the top of everybody's minds once October
yes,
hits, of course. But really interesting that there's all of these different things that are important throughout this month. So
yeah,
really, really good to shed some light on those.
sure,
But yeah, but definitely another thing that has become more prominent, I think, over the years for society too,
yes,
is pregnancy and infant loss awareness.
yeah,
Um, so, and on October 15th, specifically, that's this coming Wednesday. We're recording on Sunday night. But this Wednesday, October 15th, is also the day that's called like the Wave of Light, where everybody lights a candle in remembrance of
yeah,
those babies that were lost. Um, so I figured I'd share like a, many different ways that we honor those babies. Um, it's not only with miscarriage and stillbirth, but
yeah,
especially them. Um, but going through infertility, um, we know there are differences that we can honor. Um, so, like I said, miscarriage and stillbirths, and actually, there's pretty um, important statistics on that. One
yeah.
in four pregnancies will end in a miscarriage, and one in 100 pregnancies will end in stillbirths. Just absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Um, but we also, during this time, honor SIDS,
Yeah.
chemical pregnancies, um, neonatal infant loss, twin loss. That is, I know friends who have lost one of the twins or multiples. It's
Yeah.
absolutely
Same.
devastating.
It's
Devastating.
awful. It's awful.
Um, Embryo loss, molar pregnancy, infant and child loss, TFMR, which some people might not know what that is, but it stands for a pregnancy that was terminated for medical reasons. So if there is a medical um, diagnosis when the mom is pregnant with the baby, and there are multiple, even just one thing that is medically wrong, and it will not lead to a full term pregnancy, then it's terminated for medical reasons. Um, Another infertility warrior on Instagram listed a lot of these, which I really appreciated. Like, of course, there's so many different ways to
Yeah.
honor our losses, but one listed failed treatments, failed
Oh,
fertility treatments,
yeah.
um, ectopic pregnancy, blighted ovum, recurrent pregnancy loss, late term loss, and then I also appreciated this too, um, childless, not by choice. So many couples or um, women trying to be a single mom too, they the treatments are not a guarantee, and
Sure.
so
Yeah.
they may not have worked out for them, and they're childless, um, even though they desperately wanted to have a child. So I just appreciated this list that one of the influencers shared, because it's so important to honor all of those, um, but especially miscarriage and stillbirth, um, and I think we could both share our own experience, because we both have um, a loss that was shared through this list. Um, like mine was our first embryo, when we had three embryos after our egg retrieval, our first IVF transfer um, was around like Thanksgiving of 2019. And you go in thinking you're pregnant. They tell you you're pregnant until proven otherwise,
Yeah.
and you go about, acting like you're pregnant, doing all the things in your head. You're thinking about your future. You're calculating the due date. You're doing all the things in your head, um, and then I think it's about 10 days after transfer, or so, give or take, when you get the news, whether the embryo stuck or did not, and that failed. So we lost that embryo. And like at the time, it wasn't, I mean, by that time I was just so numb. So it was just,
Yeah.
okay, another blow. Uh, and then let's go on to the next. But now I realize like how big that was. That was really something that I should have kind of taken back and thought about and processed more, instead of kind of just brushing it under the rug and putting it, down to deal with for later and move on to the next thing, you know. But it's crushing. It's an embryo. It's your baby. Um,
Yeah. Can I speak to that a little bit? Because I was going to
yeah.
say, like, it is the one thing that when women are seeking support from me, there's this very, like, I don't know, like, how do I want to kind of present it? This reaction that I see some women have in which very similarly are sitting there and saying, okay, well, we had this loss, we had this miscarriage, or we had a chemical pregnancy, and let's just keep going and let's keep moving on. And I'm like, right, but
Yeah.
like, I will never tell anyone how they're supposed to grieve. But I also think that as a society, it is so uncomfortable to sit with those emotions that we
Hmm.
tend to just want to move on to the hopefulness of the next thing, right?
Yeah.
The anticipation for good news instead of negative news. And
Hmm.
especially when you are in a working with like an endocrinologist, fertility doctor, or whomever you were working with to try to get pregnant, we've talked about this before. It is very easy that you kind of get wrapped up into, okay, well, what's the next protocol? And I
Yeah.
just had a client recently go through that experience of, going through the egg retrieval to then the process of creating embryos and then getting those embryos. One ended up being viable to actually test genetically, and after the testing came back having some genetic abnormalities, unfortunately, right? And so
Oh,
when you're sitting there and you're hearing things like this, and yet the fertility clinic, even before they got the results back, were sitting there saying, okay, well, like we could start getting you ready for your next cycle. We could start getting you
hmm.
ready. I
Yeah.
mean, can
Yeah.
we give the person a
A
pause?
minute. Uh-huh.
Yeah, give a minute, right? Because I felt that too. We had had a chemical pregnancy after our very first transfer in
Oh,
2016. And I remember being devastated. I've shared on previous episodes that I just remember like leaning up against the wall, crying hysterically, and being like, okay, like I
mm,
have to be happy and I have to like find love and life in other things than being a mom because, like, if I put all of my hope into this one basket of being like a mom one day and it doesn't happen, I'm going to be setting myself up for misery and failure and a very sad and lonely life if that's the only thing that brings me joy and happiness, right? But I
yeah.
remember it was very, even in my own moment, it was like, oh, okay, like this is so uncomfortable, this is so not what I want to be navigating or dealing with, that let me just push forward and move on, right? Let me
Yeah.
start talking to my provider and getting like the next like protocol figured out. It's not okay. I
No.
trust people to know what's best for their systems, but I'm going to be honest that as a woman, first and foremost, but then also as a therapist who works with women, it's not actually a healthy mentality for us to necessarily have.
Yeah. I know that now. I agree. I agree. And we
Yeah.
do this to ourselves. Like, I mean, when you're in the thick of it, it's like, at least for me, it was just like you're in like this cloud, this own your own little like bubble, and it's just like I didn't process those emotions. It was just like, let's go, let's go, let's go. I did not take a break ever.
Yeah.
It was like, I just want to get to the finish line. And like, like everybody does, but you're right. Like, we need to take those pauses and we need to sit and like process those moments because that is catastrophic. That is
Yeah. Yeah.
traumatic. That
Yeah.
is so painful to go through that loss. Like, oh my gosh. And, you know, and did you say you took a break after that? What did you do after that?
Truthfully, no. I think that like we continued. Truthfully, I listen. I get it, everyone. Like it is self protection. I was being self protective, right?
Yeah.
If I just continued to move forward instead of sitting with the emotions, at least I would be able to survive it. So I don't blame anyone, right? It might not be healthy for us to do it. I don't blame anyone for being like, I just need to protect myself in this moment and move forward.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what we did, right? And then it wasn't until we got into 2017 that we were like, oh, let's take like a little bit of a break. And it was probably, I mean, it felt like it was for forever. It was actually probably just like a few months to 6 months before we were back at it again, you know?
Yeah.
It was kind of just like
Yep.
enough time for me to feel normal again, like without all those hormones in me, to then
Yeah.
say, okay, now that I'm feeling normal, let's put myself back into it. So I think that even when we have that chapter, even though it might always be a part of our life, but it's no longer active in our life, I think it's very easy for us to kind of look back and say, damn, I wish I could have done that a little differently,
Yeah.
especially in navigating loss during that time. But the really beautiful thing about grief and loss is that, like, it will come up at some point in your life,
Yes.
whether it's
Yes.
a quiet moment that you have with it or it's loud inner tantruming that we're having with it, it will present itself. So if you're actively going through it right now, I get it that like it's self-preservation, self-protection, but just know that like you are able and strong enough to navigate these losses, right? Because I think you and I, just from being in this community and being warriors in this community, we connect with other warriors, right? Especially in like
Yeah.
a social media sense too, where it's like
Yeah.
you start following these accounts, you start, reading people's stories, and you're like,
Hmm.
damn, as women, we are very resilient, right? The
Yes.
things that we go through physically and emotionally to
Hmm.
to become a mother or to achieve other goals or achievements in our lives or accomplishments, it really speaks to like our resilience. But
For
I mean,
sure.
it's still heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking. But yeah, we are. We're some badass women, whether we want to be or
Yes.
not. But yes, we,
Yes, I
because
agree
like
with you.
in the grand scheme of things, like, did we want to go through all of these processes? I did not want to go through
No.
IVF. I was praying and praying I did not want to have to go through it. But then here we are, thank God. Thank God for for the science and for IVF. But like there's no guarantee, and you put yourself through these treatments and you just keep trying and you're trying and trying, and like you said, we're resilient. But there those difficult moments, like I feel like it's just so important that we keep talking about this, because like like you were saying, like we want to go on to that next high, that next hope. Like we want to move on away from that negative or that depressing moment to hope for that next positive moment.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
now, after knowing and going through all that, it's so important to talk about those important and terrible losses, um, to process those emotions, and also to help others feel less alone too, because so many people are going through that. It's just, and recurrent pregnancy losses too. Some women go through so many miscarriages. It's so sad, so sad.
It definitely is. And I don't know about you, but like, I'm very thankful, for social media platforms, for people to be able to share their stories,
Yeah.
because I think it also gives us hope to know that, like, you're right, like, we aren't the only ones going through it. But also to know, like, if that person was able to survive it, like, I also can survive it, right?
Yes.
Like, survival is
Yeah.
also a choice, even in our hardest and most difficult of moments, right? Which I think it's very interesting that, like, World Mental Health Day also falls in October, right? Especially
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
when there are women and couples who are navigating pregnancy and infant loss as well, right?
Yeah.
Because
Right.
obviously there's not just the physical recovery and healing that comes after those losses, but it's also the emotional work too, right? The
Yep.
emotional recovery that I don't think there's a time frame, right? For many women who
No.
I know who've had even infant losses, this is something that will always be with them for the rest of their lives, and you never stop grieving the loss of a child. Um,
Right.
which I think is really, you know, it's very, I don't know what the word is, just earth shattering, right? Like life
Yeah.
shattering in so many ways. Um,
Horrific. Yeah.
it's horrific, and yet these women choose to stand up every single day and continue to live their lives. And I'm just like, if you're listening to this and you've experienced that, like you are powerful, like you are the epitome of powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that it's important. But, like, I don't know about you. I just feel like growing up, this was not something, right? Like, you didn't really hear about people talk about miscarriages. You really didn't
Right.
hear about, like, obviously the more in depth levels of loss that, just
Right.
like you were explaining before, like all the different ways of loss. Like, you didn't really
Mm-hmm.
hear about that. I don't think I even heard about an ectopic pregnancy until one day, I think in my teenage years, I had actually had a conversation with my own mother, and she had shared how she had had some losses in between my sister and I, one of them being an
Oh,
ectopic pregnancy.
jeez. My
Which, like,
gosh.
back then, I don't think I fully understood what that meant, right? Like, she explained it, and she explained it so matter of fact that I don't think I ever was like, oh, like, that sounds really intense, right? But yet, like, knowing it now, I'm like, what?
Wow. Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. Like, they were kind of like, she had, like, many different losses in between me and my sister.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting. It's very weird to also think that there's like these little like spiritual siblings that I have, like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in, heaven or whatever you identify with. It's like a crazy kind of concept, right? Even for ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about you, but in our town especially, there are two beautiful women who organize the Walk of Light. Do you guys have
Mm-hmm.
that in your town?
In my town, no. It
Okay.
might be in somewhere in the state of New Jersey, but yeah, I
Okay.
know the Wave of Light walk, that's really nice. For
Yes.
when? For
Yes.
October 15th.
Yes. So, and like everyone like calls it, like, I know, like wave of light, but like people will like call the like walk beforehand, like the walk of light. Like there's just so many different, I think, little names for it. But I will say that like it's really powerful. But for the longest time, I, when I would go, I felt like I couldn't acknowledge our like chemical pregnancy in those moments. Like internally I did, but what they usually have you do is they'll put like, they have like blue hearts or pink hearts for like a girl or a boy, and then they
Uh-huh.
like will pin them up on a board. And so like it's to acknowledge the loss of the
Right.
pregnancy or the infant.
Right.
And for me, because we were so soon into like, our pregnancy and it was a
Right.
chemical pregnancy, I really like minimized it. And then I
Yeah.
realized that like I started to write down like just like, baby boy or baby girl or, baby with my last name or, and I think that it was a way for me to say like I can choose to minimize this because it might not be as intense in any way as other people who have actually lost a child that was born to them or was born sleeping or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
situation was, and I felt almost like a fraud.
Yeah.
And that was something
Yeah.
that I've also talked to like my own clients about, where it's like you are not a fraud, right? There are
Right.
different levels of loss, but your loss still matters.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. I can understand that for sure. Yeah, it's when you think of, or even just as your journey as a whole, I always, and even sometimes still will minimize it because I'll say, oh, there's people who have had it way harder than me. But like I feel like that's that comparison piece coming, like it's
Yeah.
not better or worse. Like you had a loss, like it is painful. And that person had a loss, maybe a different loss, but that is painful too. Like it's still, every journey is different, of course. But not better or worse, but there's just there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of
Yeah.
heartache. But yeah, I can totally understand that where you feel like a fraud, but you're not. You're not. You had a significant loss that, oh my gosh, like that needs to be remembered and honored and um you know and I even think of like how I still have all of my um needles in the sharps containers, still have all that stuff. And I've always like hemmed and hawed about how to kind of put that all away and honor that journey, but also our loss. And have you ever thought of, or have you done something in honor of your loss or your journey? Like,
Mm.
My husband and I have talked about a couple of different things, like planting a tree, or
Oh, beautiful.
yeah, or planting something in the ground with a flower or something along those lines. Um, but
You know
I
what? It's so
haven't done
interesting. I
anything.
think I haven't. You know what? I think that you know what's very interesting. So, believe it or not, it wasn't me. It was actually my husband who held on to, you know, when they do the embryo transfers, they'll like take pictures or things like that, and they'll
Yeah.
be like, "This is your
Yep.
little embryo," and like you'll see the little like bubbling of like the blastocyst or things like
Yep.
that. And so we had gotten that obviously at one point, and it had been on our fridge.
Yeah.
And when that happened, I like took it down. I was like, I can't see this. I
Hmm.
can't acknowledge this. I can't honor this. It's too painful for me, etc. And he held on to it. And I think he actually still has it somewhere here in the house. And I wouldn't have thought my husband would be the one to do that. But it was actually really beautiful because, like, I remember when it hit me, it was almost like I was at work one day and it just hit me. And I was like, I came home and I was like, Joe, that was a loss. And he was like, I know.
Yeah.
You know, and it gave me, it was like just in that simplest way of being like, I know, it gave me like permission to just cry and release and
Yeah.
be like, I'm not okay, right? And to really even
Right.
start processing that in my own therapy, just be like, I'm not okay. And for me, I think it was also this realization of like, I'm not okay with like a lot of the stuff that's probably happening in my fertility journey. And I didn't really know how to, I think, put words to it at that time. And
Yeah.
looking at it now, man, oh man, like there are definitely times I sit there being like, the things I would have advocated for a little bit differently for even after that time to probably
Right.
say like, hey, like before you guys even start talking to me a little bit more about like the protocol, because I will tell you, and like this is like a what's it called, like a public service announcement, like a PSA, right? Like if you work at a fertility clinic, please remember, even though you at times can be so emotionally desensitized to the protocols and the
Hmm.
process,
Hmm.
that these are people's lives. And I don't think it's
Right.
meant in a malicious way, but I think that fertility clinics are still statistically backed
Yeah.
and funded, and they are businesses. And even though I know that like the ones that I've always worked with, right, we both worked with RMA, now Illume,
Hmm.
are wonderful, they still are also like, okay, like let's get you to your goal. But there
Yeah.
really is something about being like, okay, but like the pause and taking space is not a bad thing either for us to still
Right.
reach our goal.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? So like I think
Yeah.
like sometimes like I just wish that like care coordinators, the nurses, even the doctors could just like have that moment. I don't expect them to be therapists, okay? But I think that like to be able to have those moments to say, hey, like you just went through something, like let's like reconnect in like a
Yeah.
couple of weeks or even like a month. Like you need some time. You just need a little
Right.
time.
Right. I know. I know that it would be so helpful. You know, it would make sense to even have like a therapist as part of your team, wouldn't that?
You know what's so funny? They have support groups.
Yes, they have
And
support
they
groups.
have therapists that you can meet with individually,
They do?
They do. At least I know mine did. They do, but
Huh.
they are for a certain period of time. And
Oh,
thus,
okay.
like, why I will say, like, for anyone who is going through like fertility or perinatal or postpartum, or distress or loss or miscarriages or, stillbirths,
Yes.
it is so important to find a therapist in that time. Support groups are beautiful, but like there's also something about being able to like individually process your emotions too. So I
Right.
really do encourage people to like look into therapists that had that specialty. I'm one of them, right? Like that is
Yeah.
always really important.
Hmm.
But like going back to your like original thing, like no, we have never done anything. I definitely think that with more of like family or like even our fur babies lost, like we created like a butterfly garden for like Minnie and Max. Like
Oh, I love
there are certain
that.
things that we've done there, but like no, like in other ways, like no. And I think that's really a beautiful suggestion. To
Yeah.
like that it no matter how big or how small or however you define it, like to
Right.
honor
Hmm.
that beautiful little soul that, it
Yeah.
just wasn't their time.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. And as you're saying this, I'm like, okay, I did do I got a tattoo afterwards to honor like the whole journey.
Yeah.
Right? Like I got an infinity symbol with warrior in it. And I know like a lot of people have done that too, like after or during your infertility journey,
Mm,
people have gotten a tattoo that says something special to them to honor
mm,
their loss or their journey as a whole. Um,
totally.
but but yeah, you had said too how you had the image of your embryo on your fridge and you
Mm,
took it down immediately. That's the exact thing I did, and I'm sure a lot of people do that too, but like you remember those exact memories, those
yeah.
exact moments vividly because they hit you so hard emotionally and at such a big emotional level. Like I remember having it up there, taking a picture and sending it to my family and being like, here's our baby, right? And
Mm,
then when you lose that, then I did the same thing. I took it down immediately. I put it in a drawer. I have it still. It's right here in my drawer. But, you like immediately shut down and,
yeah.
um, but you vividly remember every single moment like that because it just is such and I don't think I'll ever forget those moments. Like
No.
that's always gonna be a part of me because it's such a impactful part of our life. Like the hardest some for most people it is the hardest part of your life. Your
Mm-hmm.
journey. It's really, really difficult. So you're always going to remember that and it's always going to be a part of your life.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think that um, this really like I know when we wanted to discuss this topic today, because obviously it has hit us on different levels and just knowing people in our lives and people that we hear through kind of like the community or you see in the social media posts or whatever. Like I think the biggest thing is it's not that we had the answers, right?
right.
It's that like we just want to acknowledge that like whatever you're going through, especially with this being pregnancy and infant loss awareness, that A, you are not alone.
Hmm.
B, it is okay to not be okay, right?
Yep.
And C, there will be hope in your life and beauty in your life. We just sometimes don't know what that looks like or how that's going to be defined.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. Very true.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know if you have any other thoughts on this girl.
No, I was going to say too, and like we mentioned, if you are in the middle of this journey, remember to take time to pause
Yeah.
and rest and recover. And because you don't always have to just chug along and go on to the next thing. That
Yeah.
would be definitely something we both um, wish that we did. But definitely me. So
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so before we like close episode 9, which is still so crazy to think, but
crazy.
highs and lows. What were your highs and lows for the week? Because it's going to give me a moment to think as well. So go for yours.
Okay, so highs and lows. My high of the week is definitely I was able to go home and visit my family. I haven't been home to Connecticut in, gosh, since the summer, since July. So it was nice to just be home, be in my house, see my
And you're
mom
all
and my
going to ask me, did
stepdad.
she see you? And I'm going to tell you all, no. She was too busy. And we were all freaked out by this nor'easter that we don't actually know what's going to
Yeah.
happen or not. It's probably going to be
Mm-hmm.
like a quarter of an inch of
Nothing.
rain at most. But I did not see my beautiful friend here.
I know. So if the next time we will be
Yes.
able to do a live episode together, that would be cool.
Yes. It should.
Um, but yeah, that was my high, seeing my family. And then my low of the week was definitely continuing to deal with allergies with my son. He is using his inhaler a little more. I'm hoping this nor'easter kind of wipes everything out and gets this shit out of here
Yeah,
because
seriously.
yeah, this ragweed has been rough, and it's always something. But yeah, how about you? How was your week? What was your high and low?
Okay, well, let's start with the lows. So, like, Simona
Yeah.
knows this because I was texting her, but the low was I had a very sick, it's our kiddos, right? They're just both going through it right now. I had a very sick kiddo. Um, didn't really know we were navigating. It's a very helpless feeling as a parent when you're like,
Mhm.
man, oh man, I don't know why these symptoms are coming up. And like, I am not a doctor, right? Even though ChatGPT makes me feel like a doctor, but I am not a doctor. And I had like some opinions or perspectives in the back of my mind of like what she might be navigating. And luckily, I'd shared with you previously, like we got some answers, but I think like just dealing with like a sick toddler is really tough, right?
Oh
Because
my
like it
gosh,
is
yeah.
big emotions and it is very stressful and draining for all. It was a
Yeah.
lot of sleepless nights. Like I literally actually felt like it pushed me back into like newborn stage. It was like
Oh
unreal. We were
God.
getting up like every like hour to 2 hours. It was very, very tough. Um, the beautiful thing is we are on the other side of it now, and I think all will be beautiful and great and all back to like normalcy.
Yes.
So that's also a little bit of part of the high, but I will say that the high was actually like really working well with my husband as a team as we were navigating the illness, right? So like really like tag teaming and
Oh,
being like, okay, like you clean up this while I go help her. Okay, now I'm cleaning up this and you go help her. And it's just like we were very cohesive. And we're not
that's so
always, right? Like,
nice.
I will tell you this, like, we are not always. Like, I am definitely the type of personality that when I'm stressed, if you get like too close to me, I'm like, and now you're breathing too close to me. And they're like, and the person is like, oh my gosh, like, please, like, relax, right? Like, don't take it out on me. And so it was very important for me to also get like a hold of that. So, like,
That's so
really seeing
nice.
him like support me and actually like me not being the only one to like have to take off from work, like him also like choosing to take off from work because like I hear this so often. If a child
Hmm.
is sick, often the mom is the one who is calling out of work and staying home and like
Yep.
nurturing and caring, and like we both really took the time from both of our jobs to take care of our daughter. So like that was like really actually from like a societal perspective, like that was like a big high I think for us where we're like, oh, we're not just gonna like give into like gender roles here. So like it
Yeah.
was pretty cool.
Good. Go, Joe. That's
Go, go,
awesome.
go.
I love
So
it.
anyways,
I
yes,
love
I was
it.
gonna say, so those were the beautiful highs and lows. But
Love it.
Thank you all for listening to this beautiful episode together.
Thank you
Hard
so much.
episode, but like always a wonderful time to connect with my girl here, Simona.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for listening. Don't forget to check out the show notes if you have not already and leave us a review. Thank you so much for being here. Love you all.
Bye.
Bye.